Hey guys, welcome back to Two Loops. This is episode 4. Know what you're thinking? Looks like you're wearing the same thing that you were wearing in episode 3. Double this week, double recording. We had some catching up to do. So, Luke, and we will again waste no time jumping into week 2 of our Xbox Xbox Game Pass of our random games, and this week was Rain on Your Parade. I knew nothing about this one. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, like you said, this one we actually just clicked the random button and it was suggested for us, and some small developer that created this game that not many people have heard of, and really excited to hear your opinions on this one.
So Rain on Your Parade is a game where you are a cloud
Yes.
and you rain on people or things. So the game starts off, you're at a wedding, you have to rain on the bride and groom and turn over like 60 chairs or something. So you just have X amount of rain, and it's one button to unleash it, and you just move around. So you progress through and go to different levels, eventually get off of rain and get other items, chemistry, or you got some random things in there that you could spin. You could fill up your rain. You had to make fires, and probably pretty in-depth for a cloud game.
Yeah, it was actually fun because each new level introduced something new.
Right.
You said the first one was, it was a wedding and you had to get everybody wet and hit so many chairs. There are like 3 or 4 achievements for each level. Like one of them is required and the other 3 are kind of optional. So of course with me, I had to make sure I got every single optional.
Yes. I didn't know they were optional for a while.
Yeah. So then the next one, you're putting out some fires or something. There's another one where you have to water so many trees, but not get any of the people wet. There's another one was almost like a tower defense. You had people running from different sides and you had to get them wet before they reached a certain thing.
Yes.
I a little vague because it's been a bit since I played it, but each level was something new, something different, and it made it not feel as stale as it might sound if you say you're just raining on things.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And this is a mindless game. Like, you have to have some mindless games, right?
Yeah.
But also, when you're completing all the objectives, got a little challenge. I mean, there were a couple that I had to replay to get all the objectives or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'll give my kind of final thoughts first. What happens is I randomize the game and then I watch the trailer usually, because I'm not an Xbox guy. I don't know hardly any of these games unless they're multi-console, and I mean, several of them are not.
Right.
So I looked it up and I was like, I think I texted you and I was like, we're playing a game where you're a cloud. Like, so I had zero expectations going in. It was, semi-enjoyable. I think it was, again, a mindless play. My thing is I'm done with it, and I will never play it again for sure. But for what it's worth, it was fine. I don't know what else to say about it. I know you had more to say, and sounds like you probably enjoyed it a little more than me.
Like, I'm way more positive on this game than I have any right to be.
Sure.
I feel like it seems like a small studio kind of just figuring out what they're capable of, and they made this game, and I feel like it was made really well with a lot of different things included in it. Like you said, it is mindless, but it's enjoyable mindless. I'm in the same boat as you, as I'm probably never going to play it again. It's not something that I'm going to choose to play over a different game, even if it's sitting in my library for the next 2 years. If it was something where I ended up looking up, I think there's 50 total levels.
Okay.
If it was something where somebody was like, hey, I'll race you and see who can finish the game first, like, I think I could sit down and I would love that challenge of like competing against someone else. but just to sit in my own free time, probably not something I'm gonna do. But still a really enjoyable experience, and I'm not upset that we got that game.
Yeah, I wasn't mad that, actually, if I didn't know that there were only 50 levels, I might have played more, because I think I got through probably 10.
Well, what I saw was it's 50 levels to beat the game, but then you get kind of like a new game plus option,
Right,
which takes you back to the beginning, and you have different objectives
Yeah,
and
sure.
things like that. So you would have to play through it a couple of times to get all the achievements and
Yeah.
things like that. So if you're somebody that loves achievements, you love having those objectives and trying to solve them, you would probably really enjoy this game.
yeah, you don't have to play through it 100 times, like 12 minutes. but-
Right, right.
Yeah, so I mean, for me overall, it's probably a little unfair, but I'm in like the 4-ish range on this one, just because of mostly no desire to. I feel a little harsh here for a game that was very nice, but I'm not texting my buddies like, you've got to play Rain on Your Parade.
Yeah.
And maybe part of my higher 12 minutes was because I was showing people the trailer before it came out, like, hey, you've got to play this. So some of it could be that. I just feel like it was a first pass for a studio, and if another game from that studio came up, I wouldn't be like, oh, great, here we go again. But that's where I stand.
Did you have an actual rating?
Oh,
You said
4.
4?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a lot higher on this than you.
Sure.
But I think I need to figure out my grading scale.
You know, I think that's what's great too, because aside from our names, there's nothing else similar about us.
Yeah.
Like we like different games, we like different movies, we like different music. So I think that's great.
Well, it's not necessarily that I think this was an 8 or anything like that.
Sure.
Not at all. But my issue is I was honestly probably gonna give it around a 6.
Yeah.
But then I sit and I compare it to 12 minutes. So I personally, just because I felt like I was accomplishing something, I was meeting those achievements, I almost want to give it a touch higher than 12 minutes. But I feel like 12 minutes had the story and the feel, and there was something emotional that you almost like felt as you were
Yeah.
trying to do these things. So in that point, it's like, how could I possibly grade this higher than that? So with 12 minutes being a 6 last week, I feel like I have to go look like a 5.5.
Yeah, I mean, I almost think they all need to be independent of each other, but I do have just a blog that I'm going to put for the games that I'm playing, and you just gave me a good idea of, I think, the emotion. I was trying to think of different ways to rate a game, and I was really struggling. I think I asked you about it because I'm like, graphics don't really matter in 2021.
No, not at all.
So like, that's not going to be one. So I was really struggling, but emotion is a good one, I think, to add on there. So check out the games I played in September. It has both of these, both 12 minutes and Rain on Your Parade on there, as well as a couple other ones I'm playing in my free time. But yeah, I think it would be okay to rate it 6.5 and just forget about 12 minutes. So you thought this game was a 6.5, and then when we rewatch these and rate them all, we're gonna be like, you rated that higher than no.
Yeah, like you said, it almost is different scales because you can't. So one of the things I love is Pokemon. We've mentioned that. I'm not gonna say Pokemon is greater than Call of Duty or whatever, because that's obviously opinion, a lot of opinion, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of things. Like, I'm not a shooter fan, so I would rank shooters lower, although it may be one of the best multiplayer games out there. So it's opinionated, and you can't really compare them to each other. So maybe that's one thing I need to look into, is each rating on its own isn't comparing the two games. It's just comparing almost maybe that game to my perception or my expectations.
You can't really compare comedies with horror movies. Like, you have to compare horror movies to horror movies. So in this, you can compare, this to similar games of, maybe mindless games or something. So yeah, I think that's fair. Shooter games, you may not like them, but you could compare all shooter games equally. So
right, I may enjoy Halo way more than I enjoy Call of Duty. That doesn't mean Halo's better than something in an RPG that I loved, even though I
Right.
graded it higher, I'm more comparing it to similar games.
Yeah,
That would make sense.
Yeah. You can compare No Mercy to Here Comes the Pain. Yeah. Wrestling games, wrestling.
Both tens.
Yes. Speaking of wrestling, AEW Grand Slam, I gotta get those right. Grand Slam, just occurred / is occurring. So one show was 2 days ago, one show tonight. And the show 2 days ago was Bryan Danielson's in-ring debut
Yes.
against Kenny Omega. Best bout machine, Kenny Omega coming back. Highly touted, and you haven't actually watched it, right?
Correct. I've seen some clips,
Okay.
but I have not sat down and watched it. But based on everything I've heard, I am not a wrestling fan unless I do. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I plan to sit down and see it.
So, from what you read, overall thoughts?
Match of the year, possible match of the decade, possibly perfect wrestling match.
Yeah.
Is kind of where everything's going. Now, I know often Bryan Danielson, I'm going to make that mistake. I'm so used to him being Daniel Bryan for the past 10 years or so. There's a lot of almost overhyping with both of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that plays into this. So I don't want to get my expectations too high, but I do really enjoy both of them. So I'm hoping it lives up to what everybody has said about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole show. Let's start. This opened the show. A 30-minute match. We'll get there in a minute. The fans were going bonkers. Rightfully. I mean, this was their biggest show, I think, 20,000 people. I heard they weren't ready for 20,000 people. Obviously, the evasive concessions were horrible, but I truly believe this. I truly believe this, and you could almost see it. Bryan Danielson was tearing up, hearing the fans in the ring. Like they had rang the bell, and he was like tearing up, and they came together. And I would love to know what they really said. Some of it, I think, might have been a little trash talk, and some of it, I think Kenny Omega's like, this is what it's all about. Like, you hear these people going crazy. So the fans were awesome. They locked up. Like 90% of wrestling matches start, the fans went nuts. JR said it like 3 times too. They're like, the fans just went crazy for a lockup. And it was. I do not like, just in general, these slow builds to these matches. Like the first 5 minutes, I know you have to do it. It's Rock Hogan, Darby, CM Punk. You have lockups, some wrist locks. This one wasn't as bad as like the CM Punk Darby one or Rock Hogan. I mean, that was horribly slow. And then this got pretty into it. Had some great spots. The first time that Bryan did a suicide dive, I think he was relieved. Like, all right, I hit my first, and it wasn't perfect by any means, but I hit my first one. It took a little bit of a bump. I'm fine. Let's tear the house down. And they did a great job. So the match ended in a time limit draw. I hate it, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
I love that it ended in a time limit draw because one, it leaves open the rematch.
Of course.
Which, let's face it, for a weekly show, yes, this was their biggest attendance, but it was still a weekly show.
Yes. So that's one
doesn't necessarily deserve this high profile of a match. But the reason I love it is because it's one of those things that should happen often, but almost never does. They always have a time limit and you never reach it.
Yeah.
And so to know that it can happen is exciting to me, especially when you have 2 people of that caliber. It's not like you threw 2 scrubs out there, gave them 30 minutes and everybody was bored. You gave them exactly what they wanted, left them wanting more. And so much of wrestling these days, maybe not as much AEW, but I think they are getting a little more into it, is so many DQ finishes or dirty finishes. You're allowed to have matches where people win or lose, and you're also allowed to have draws where nobody wins, nobody loses. Both guys look better coming out of it. I think it's a great thing to have, and I'm really glad they used it here to remind fans of, hey, this is why we announce a time limit before matches.
This is the second or third time they've used it. The first time I know for a fact was Cody Darby, when nobody knew who Darby was, and he took Cody a full 20 minutes. I think it's been used in a TNT title match maybe, or I think it's been used again, but yeah, so the fans were a little, obviously, like, let them fight. I think we got a fight forever chant, which is one of my favorite chants. And, you know, like the Lucha Brothers and Young Bucks, I think, got in the cage. So fans getting a little angry. The very next segment, Punk comes out and just, they're fine again. They're good. So I love the match. I love what they did. Obviously, we're going to get more of this down the road, which will be really fun. Rest of the card, very good too. Brian Pillman, I'm not sure if Griff Garrison's hurt, if he's just getting a little singles push right now. And MJF was, you know, nothing too crazy, but it did its job.
Can I interrupt for a second? Did you see MJF's parents?
Yes.
His own parents had a sign that, I'm not quoting it directly, but said something of the lines of, we're MJF's parents and we agree that he sucks.
Yes. I don't know why I can't think of what the third match was, because I thought it was really good. The main event was
Tag match.
Yeah, but who? Oh yeah, Sting and Darby and FTR, which was an incredibly good match. I didn't love FTR losing because they're a tag team. I do not like tag teams losing to two singles wrestlers. I just think that's one of the silliest things in the world. That being said, I know they're protecting Darby and, you know, it's Sting, for crying out loud.
Right.
It was a really good match. It was a really good match, but I would like to, I don't think losing hurt FTR, but losing was not going to hurt Darby and Sting.
Right. I almost just don't like that this match happened.
Yes.
Because AEW touts that wins and losses matter. So Darby should not lose. Sting could lose 40 straight matches and nobody's going to care because he's Sting. And their tag division is great.
Yes.
So FTR being a tag team, one of the best tag teams in the world, they don't need to lose to a guy like Sting.
Yes.
They should be built up as possible challengers for those titles. And you want to protect Darby, so I understand Darby not losing, but you booked this match knowing somebody had to. I don't get that part. But as far as the match goes, no issues with the actual match itself. 4 awesome dudes fighting it out.
Yeah. So you said wins and losses matter, which reminded me of, I was doing a blog about my favorite wrestlers and least favorite, and every person on the Gun Club was a least favorite: Austin, Billy, and Colton. And I wrote about an episode where they turned on Paul White, and I said, if they turn into assholes and claim that they're undefeated and wins and losses are supposed to matter and they're not even in the top 5, that I'm all in on this. And they did it. They said wins and losses are supposed to matter, because they've never lost a tag team match, any of the 3. I don't love that either, but they did that, so that was kind of fun. The main event was Ruby Soho, Britt Baker for the women's championship. I love that was the main event. I thought it was fine. It did, to your point, have a lot of outside interference from Rebel and Jamie Hayter, who is my perfect ideal build of a wife if I ever get. I love that she has an accent. I love everything about Jamie Hayter. The match is fine. Back to the finish though. AEW doesn't do DQs or countouts basically. So there is a lot of shenanigans, but they don't do DQs or countouts, which I kind of like. I don't like the BS finishes, but this was perfectly done. I mean, Ruby didn't need to win the title yet. She needs to kind of go back to the bottom and fight some of these people, but it was really good to spotlight her. I love everything about Britt Baker as well, obviously. So yeah, no, it was a perfectly fine match. Nothing great, nothing bad about it necessarily.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea I got from it. It was a very good TV main event.
Yes.
Ruby was ready for that moment. She's been ready for that moment for
Yeah.
years, so it didn't take away anything. I agree, she didn't need to win. She may win in a year or two from now,
Yes.
but she doesn't need it right now. Britt obviously is in that position for a reason. And what kind of feather in the cap is that for someone like her who is kind of this braggadocious heel to, yeah, this match had Kenny Omega versus Brian Danielson on it, but I was the main event.
And I guarantee she says it. The other thing I absolutely loved was the fans chanting Ruby Soho, DMD. Ruby, like, I'm obviously not the only one who loves Britt Baker, and she is the worst character. Like, but it's so awesome. And yeah, overall, a great show. I can't wait for tonight. I won't be watching tonight because it's like a 10 to midnight special 2 hour. But yeah, I think that was good.
Curious, is there any truth to the rumors that you're planning to fly down to Florida to her practice and actually get your teeth cleaned?
I would do that. I wish she did my jaw surgery. Apologies for technical difficulties, but I think we're wrapped up with AEW. So
Yeah, AEW, a great weekly show.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention another weekly show that just started this week, and that is Survivor. Now,
season 41.
Season 41. It's been on for 20 years, and it may be something that none of you care about, but it's something that over the past couple seasons I've gotten back into. I watched it as a kid, skipped a long time of watching it, and now it started back up a couple years ago. I think I started watching it with my wife. So it's something we watch every week, and I believe you watch it as well.
I do. If you've never seen it somehow, there are 2 seasons on Netflix, I think. 2 random seasons. I have no idea why. But yes, the same. I watched it as a kid because my mom watched it, and then I stopped watching it for several years and now watch it again. So season premiere was this week.
Yes. I have something completely, basically unrelated to what happened on the show to ask you about.
Okay.
But it's very important that I do so. Back in 1995, there was a movie released called Heavyweights. Are you familiar with
am
this
I
movie?
familiar with this movie? This is one of the greatest movies in the world. And are you going to tell me a cast member there?
I am going to tell you that Brad looks exactly like Tony Perkis. And every time you see him, you cannot help but laugh because he is the spitting image of Ben Stiller's character from Heavyweights.
Yes. Ben Stiller, the worst in that movie. And yes, unbelievable. I did not notice that while watching, but now that you've brought it up, that's fantastic.
Now you will not be able to see him without
Cannot
that
unsee
coming
that.
to mind.
Yes. Fantastic. We could spend hours talking about Heavyweights, the movie. Not kidding. I burnt out a VHS watching that so many times growing up.
Fantastic.
So yeah, Survivor comes on. They said a little bit different this year. 26 days instead of 40. No rice instead of rice. Going to be harder. When they did the immunity challenge, they said there's only one idol, and there's like less time. You gotta get people voted out,
Yeah.
and sure enough, they said one idol, 2 people going to tribal. So
Yeah, and stuff like Flint and their pots and stuff. only one group got it at first. The other two then had to earn it.
Yes.
And then when they did that challenge, 2 teams lost theirs.
Yes.
So like, there's a lot at stake in these challenges, more than just immunity. And I love that because the attraction I always had to the show as a kid was the challenges.
Yes.
I didn't care about the social game and how are they going to build a shelter and all that. I just wanted to see the challenges. That to me is the fun part. I would love to go to an amusement park or something where it was just these obstacle courses and these challenges, and it'd be like, here, get a team together and go see if you can do that. To me, that would be amazing. That is the biggest draw to me to Survivor still to this day.
Yeah, we talked, I think, one time on the best podcast you never heard about which reality show you'd like to be on. Survivor was the one I would like to be on, but could never be on because there's so many water challenges and I can't swim. I just really get into the whole show. I'd like to try to go live in the woods for 40 days and see what kind of crazy. I'd like to do it with more medical attention than they have there because I know they have medics, but I don't like the people passing out in the middle of challenges or anything like that. But yeah, without diving into all the Survivor things that pass.
I'm gonna say no. I would never do Survivor. That's why I said I wanted an amusement park with the challenges.
Yes.
I don't want to do all the other things.
Yeah.
I just want the challenge.
So week 1 is, very early. It's a 2-hour, but what were your thoughts on week 1 and any characters you really liked or disliked?
Well, I obviously have the connection to Brad. I don't know whether it's good or bad, but I laugh every time I see him now. I think they really focused heavy this season on diversity and inclusion, people from the LGBTQ plus community, races. I feel like that was intentional and I mean, probably a good thing to do in today's day and age. I know sometimes you just have maybe one African-American cast member and that's like, oh, out of 16 people. So I think it's great that they're including more people, more backgrounds. So many characters with the sad stories of, oh, I'm doing this for my mom because she died of COVID. Brad himself, his dad got cancer 5 years ago and died a week before going out there. I mean, I currently don't have anybody I'm super connected to, but I feel like with a lot of their backstories, it'll be easy in a couple of weeks to tell you, oh, I've really connected with this person. So the one thing I think I did tell you about one of the cast members was there's a former NFL player.
Yeah.
So he played at LSU, was undrafted, went and played safety for, I think, the Cowboys for a couple of years.
You can play for the Bears as well, So.
And it's crazy because he looks huge compared to everybody else. But he was a safety, which is typically you would think of one of the smaller guys on the football field.
Yeah.
So I just think that's hilarious to see one of like an NFL player compared to just normal everyday people.
Yep, and he's already lying about it.
Yeah.
Somebody asked him if hey, we think you were an NFL player. He's like, I coach youth football.
Yeah, he was honest about he played in college, but then he said that's where he ended.
Yeah.
And there's also like a neurosurgeon.
Yes.
And it's like, you're way too smart. Like, you can't tell people that, or they'll be like, okay, get him out of here immediately.
Yeah.
But you can tell just hearing him talk that he's more intelligent than everyone else.
Yeah, and he said at the very beginning, because he got picked for the water challenge to carry water, he's like, I can't do this, but I also can't say that again because they'll call me a wimp. And so, I think it's way too early to pick characters. The one other thing I liked is when the 3 individuals were walking up the summit, they had like real footage of the one kid growing up, and like real pictures and stuff. That's new to Survivor, I think. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Not that I remember.
Yeah, I feel like they really are pushing that emotional connection to these people.
Which I am a sucker for.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you finish the episode?
No, but that's okay. I mean, I looked at the cast people and I saw who got voted out, but I don't even know who they are.
So you did see who got voted out?
I know the one because everybody was kind of after him, the gentleman that got voted out.
Abraham,
yes.
And the other one voted out was Sarah. And
Yes.
Sarah's the one whose grandmother passed away from COVID,
Okay.
and she was out there for her grandmother. So on one hand, it's like, oh, that's so sad for her grandmother. I wish she could have gone farther, but at the end of the day, it's a game, and that doesn't matter to those people. But to the people sitting at home, yeah, you did have that connection to her. Maybe you were hoping she'd pull it out at the end. So those emotional connections to the people sitting at home are extremely important.
And I think for the people there, like, crazy to say this, but she may have been threat later in the game because on day 20, she breaks down and tells everybody after she wins a challenge that, you know, her mother passed away and that she's doing this for her and that this challenge win meant more. And, everybody's like, well, shoot, I can't vote her out.
At the end of the day, they're still human. They still have emotions, no matter how much they try and hide them.
Yeah, so I love Survivor. Can't wait to see what they do. I'll be a little interested to see if they're able to bring the families. That episode always gets me every time when they bring the loved one. Like, can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, with COVID and everything, it would obviously be more difficult. And with being 28 days as opposed to 40, they're gonna have to cut some things out. Yeah, that'll be very interesting to see. There's also, I don't know if you saw the game within a game type thing. They put some little puzzle on the screen and said you could go to a website and solve it. I don't know if that's aimed more for kids or adults. I don't exactly know what it is, but they're trying to make it more interactive.
They are, for sure. Yeah, I really hope that converts. Yeah, I think it'll be great. I also kind of like the dice thing, to where you can get a 1 in 6 chance if you need a Hail Mary. And somebody tried it, right?
I don't think so. I don't think they thought they were going to, but yeah, you have a 1 in 6 chance of being safe, but you lose your vote.
Right.
So if it's a split vote, it's not worth that risk.
Yeah,
but
this
if
is when you
know
know,
it's everyone after you and it's your life, it'll be interesting to see if that ends up like screwing somebody over later where they think they're all against them and it's actually a split vote and they waste their vote and get eliminated because of it. It's got to play a part at some point, I feel like, but for a 16.7% chance, I don't know that I would ever do it. It's so risky.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see this year, so I'm excited. We may talk about this more.
Yeah, it may not be every single week a whole lot to talk about, but it's definitely something that we will both be keeping up with. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. We'll be happy to discuss our feelings about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else for this week?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think we forgot during the video game segment to tell you what next week's game is.
Absolutely.
It's sort of because we don't know, so we randomized and got Tell Me Why, which is a game that, I don't know if that shutting down is good. My computer.
Yeah, it means it's starting off.
Yeah. Hopefully those will still be good, or I will be very sad. So we have Tell Me Why or potentially a new one. We're going to tweet those out so you guys can play along with us if you have Game Pass or if you own the game. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I think we have a little uncertainty because I believe you downloaded Tell Me Why and started. And it's more cinematic than game. So our whole, you have an hour to play it. Most of that hour is you doing nothing.
Yeah, so I've played for an hour and pressed, not exaggerating. I mean, at the beginning you walk around a little bit, but since then I have pressed 5 or 6 buttons, I think, which is not the point of what we're doing. So.
Yeah, it might be something that would be a great experience.
It's a huge download, so it's already on my PC. I may play it more on my free time, but I don't know that that's going to be our game.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for listening as always. Until next time, we'll have another great episode coming up, and we'll see you then.
Yeah. We lost all of that.